Welcome to Movie Caps. Today, I will show you a war movie from 2012, titled, White Tiger. Spoilers ahead. Watch out, and take care. The film opens with the aftermath of a fight, during the Eastern Front tank battles, in the year 1943. Soviet soldiers are trudging through the battlefield, looking for survivors. In a disabled tank, they find a tank driver, who by all accounts should be dead, but is not. He is immediately taken to the medic, who initially doesn't consider him, thinking the man dead. But a nurse notices that he is still breathing, and hands him over to the medical team. The rescued tank driver has 90% of his body covered in burns, but to everyone's surprise, he survives the night, and recovers within 3 days. The doctor goes to converse with him, and asks him his name, but the man is unable to answer. It turns out that he is suffering from a condition known as retrograde amnesia. The doctors and other officials, including the general, have a meeting to discuss the soldier's identity, and come up with nothing. The doctor says that they call him Ivan Nadinov, from the Russian word found in a tank. The commander asks if they have the wrong file, as the man in front of him does not have his body covered 90% with burns. The doctor then explains the peculiar case, of how Ivan miraculously was able to recover from severe burns in 3 days. They eventually decide to let Ivan back onto the field, despite the fact, that while he does not recall any memories, he does retain the skills to drive a tank. The doctor wants Ivan Nadinov on non-combat duty, but the general dismisses this suggestion. He says that he will return to driving tanks, as he remembers how to operate one, and there will be no exception to the rule of making tank crew members return to their duties. He does not need his memories to operate a tank. On the other hand, a train pulls in, carrying with it destroyed and damaged tanks, in a low-key creepy reverse allegory, of corpses being carried away from battlefields. Ivan is spotted by 2 senior officers, standing near one of the tanks. He says that the tank told him that it was attacked by a panther. To oblige him, Officer Nikolai points to the next tank, and asks Ivan if that tank said anything to him. Nadinov says that this tank was attacked by a tiger, the very same tank that attacked Ivan in his tank. He says that it is known as the White Tiger. The officer dismisses him, and the 2 seniors question Ivan's sanity, and the urban legend of the White Tiger, an enemy tank that seemingly comes out of nowhere, and attacks their tanks, before disappearing into the forest. The threat of the White Tiger is confirmed, through the report of a captured German soldier, who tells them that it could only have been the White Tank, that could have single-handedly destroyed 20 tanks. The Soviets do not believe him, but he insists on the credibility of his report. He says that the White Tiger legend does not strike hope in the hearts of the German army, instead, it strikes fear. Later on, we see the Russian officials have a meeting. They talk about the mysterious, powerful, and elusive fascist tank that is taking down entire battalions by itself. It appears behind their rear flanks, and disappears into the woodlands later on. The commander asks for suggestions, and they decide to fight fire with fire. The German White Tiger is one of its kind, with specifications that put it well above par with other tank models. They decide to build a prototype tank, which would be an advanced version of a T-34-85. It will be protected by stronger armor, and an engine with greater horsepower, so it can hold its own against the White Tiger, and take care of the problem once and for all. This idea belongs to Major Fedotov, and he is tasked with putting together a team to handle the new tank. General Smirnov gives them only 15 days instead of a month, to build the tank and assemble a team. Fedotov chooses Nadinov as commander and driver due to his skills, and his prior experience with the White Tiger, along with the gunner Kryuk, and the loader Berdayev. Later on, Ivan Nadinov and the major have a conversation, in which Ivan tells Fedotov that the White Tiger is dead. However, the major is not interested in how the White Tiger met its end, but in what sort of equipment it holds. Thus, Nadinov complies. As Ivan is the most recommended soldier, who knows how to operate the tank, Major Fedotov asks that he be classified as a junior lieutenant, with the commander of the prototype tank T-34-85. Fedotov then explains his mission objective to find and destroy the White Tiger. We then see Nadinov share his plans with Fedotov, saying that the White Tiger hides in the forest. To this his crew disagrees, saying that they've searched the area well. However, Fedotov turns to Ivan for his suggestion. Ivan's plan is to draw out and ambush the fascist tank. They dig a hole in the forest, and hide the Soviet tank in it, covered with leaves. They use another T-34 to lure out the German tank. The White Tiger appears to attack the bait T-34, and destroys it. Meanwhile, Fedotov tries to take photographs of the enemy tank, but fails. Nadinov's tank appears from behind cover, and gets attacked by the White Tiger from very close range. But to everyone's puzzlement, the White Tiger does not fatally damage their tank, and instead retreats. Everyone is confused as to why the White Tiger did not attack and destroy them, even though it could easily have, but decided to vanish inexplicably. Fedotov says that the White Tiger outsmarted them, and the Soviets believe that the tank sank into the swamp behind the forest. This is not believed by Nadinov. He believes that the German tank is still at large. A peculiar concept of the tank gods is now introduced into the story, as Fedotov is told by a sergeant that Ivan believes in these gods. Fedotov visits the camp sometime later, and finds Nadinov kneeling in a field full of wrecked tanks. They strike up a conversation about how the White Tiger is biding its time, and preparing for the Soviets to attack. Fedotov tries to get information out of Ivan, about what he believes about the tank gods. Ivan says, that he believes, that these tank gods want him to destroy the White Tiger. He also reveals that he knows all this, because he hears the tanks, and that is the reason why he survives his battles. Fedotov finds all this incredibly hard to believe, but still does not dismiss Ivan, and listens to him. Ivan says that despite his burns, the tank he was operating told him of the incoming danger, and protected him. He believes that the White Tiger is a ghost, not operated by any human crew. Sergeant Serpov suggests to Major Fedotov to dismantle Nadinov's crew and send him away, as he is talking nonsense. But in a curious turn of events, Fedotov chooses to believe Nadinov, and does not reassign a crew. He supports Ivan and believes him. Meanwhile, the Soviets continue to question the German officer. He says that he does not know anything about the White Tiger, and has never come across it. They refuse to believe his claims. The Soviet army tanks take the initiative to advance on the White Tiger. They open fire, and draw in closer to the range of the White Tiger, trying to surround it. This proves fruitless, because the White Tiger holds up its own, by firing faster and with unmatched dexterity, unlike the maneuvering of any human crew. This causes the Soviet tanks to be utterly defeated. To their horror, the White Tiger is able to take down the Soviet tanks with a mere shot. Nadinov and his crew chase the White Tiger, as it begins its retreat after wiping out the Soviet army. They follow its path through the forest fog, and come upon an abandoned village. Nadinov is able to detect a Panzer IV concealed in a barn, as they advance through the village. Kryuk fires at it with an armor-piercing shell, resulting in damaging its turret. They then come up to the White Tiger, and Nadinov engages it in combat. They start firing, but are suddenly unable to maneuver their tank, as the T-34's gun barrel gets stuck with some mud. The White Tiger suddenly fires, but it misses, giving them the opportunity to move onwards and shoot its turret. But this backfires, as their cannon blows up. Nadinov gets out of his tank, and faces off against the ghost tank with just his gun. But the White Tiger, yet again, retreats and disappears, choosing to spare Ivan. Meanwhile, Fedotov visits the commanding general officer, and tries to convince him that he believes that both the White Tiger and Ivan Nadinov are not real. Instead, they are the creations of the war itself. He repeats Ivan's belief of the White Tiger being a crewless aerial tank, and how Ivan can hear the tanks. This unsurprisingly does not affect or sway the commanding general's views, and he is ordered to take a rest. He is given a 10-day leave to gain stability in his thoughts. After the Battle of Berlin, and the surrender of Nazi Germany, in the year of 1945, Fedotov drives out onto a field, and comes across Nadinov with his tank. They both start talking, and Fedotov tries to convince Ivan to leave the battlefield and return home, as the peace talks have concluded with a surrender, and the war is finally over. Yet Ivan does not agree. He believes that the White Tiger is still out there, and the war will not come to an end, until the ghost tank is found by him and destroyed. He does not agree with Fedotov, when he says that the war is over, because he believes that the White Tiger is biding its time and can attack still. He is a firm believer that it will strike again, and that they haven't seen the last of it yet. Fedotov walks away, but when he looks back, Ivan Nadinov and his tank are no longer there. On the other hand, Hitler is seated across a man covered in shadows, possibly the devil himself. Hitler defends his actions in the war. He says that his actions, and Germany, will be portrayed as villains in the history of the world. He even implies that the destruction of the Jewish people, and his attacks on the Soviet Union, was only a realization of what the rest of Europe wanted, but could not openly admit. Hitler says that war is life itself. It has no beginning or end. It is everywhere and it is eternal. That war is the original human state. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this. Turn on the notifications and leave a like to help the channel out.